Hi, friends. I'm truly grateful you're here. Sometimes, the quietest corners of the world hold the biggest surprises. This story begins under Maple Hollow's oldest tree. A weary police officer, a loyal German shepherd, and a hungry boy too scared to ask for help. What starts as a simple act of kindness soon ripples through an entire town, turning strangers into family and a lonely bench into a lifeline. If you've ever wondered how hope can grow from the smallest seed of compassion, this story is for you. Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you want to support more stories about second chances and the power of kindness, please hit like and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps me bring more heartwarming stories to life. Let's dive in. Nobody expected trouble beneath the wide, patient arms of Maple Hollow's oldest tree. The bench had always been Officer Megan Carter's safe haven, a spot where she could sit, toes tapping gently in the dirt, and forget the stress of the badge, the radio, the calls that never seemed to end. That spring day, sunlight streamed through the new green leaves, speckling her uniform with dappled gold as she unwrapped a ham sandwich. Next to her, Buddy, the loyal German shepherd with a coat of dark sable and eyes wise beyond his years, waited with a silent dignity, tail thumping softly against the wood. They had made this their ritual. Every Wednesday, no matter the chaos, Megan took her lunch outdoors, sharing half with Buddy, letting the quiet work its medicine. But that day, something shifted. She noticed him out of the corner of her eye, a boy, maybe 9 or 10, barefoot despite the morning chill. His hair was a wild tangle, and his jeans hung loose over skinny knees bruised and scabbed. He moved through the shadows at the edge of the park, glancing nervously from tree to tree, eyes flicking up to Buddy with a strange cocktail of fear and longing. In one hand, he clutched a crumpled baseball cap. The other hand hovered near his stomach, as if trying to keep it from growling. Megan's instincts went on high alert, but not in the way they usually did when faced with trouble. This wasn't a look of mischief or defiance. This was hunger, and something more complicated. Something Megan hadn't seen in years, except maybe in the mirror when she was a girl herself. She watched as the boy lingered, just out of reach, eyes darting between the sandwich in her hand and Buddy's massive paws. Megan remembered how it felt to want to ask for help and not know how. So she made the first move. Tearing her sandwich neatly in two, she set one half down on a napkin at the edge of the bench, not making a show of it, pretending to study the sun through the maple leaves. Buddy watched her, then looked at the boy, tongue lolling out in a friendly dog smile. To anyone else, Buddy might seem intimidating. A working police dog, broad-shouldered and silent, trained for emergencies. But Megan knew the dog's secret. His real superpower was empathy. Buddy scooted forward on his haunches, never taking his gaze off the boy, and nudged the napkin closer with his big, wet nose. The boy froze. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then, with a sudden decision, he shuffled forward. Not toward Megan, but toward Buddy, crouching down low, one arm out as if approaching a nervous animal. Buddy stayed perfectly still, lowering his head until their eyes were level. For a long moment, the boy seemed to weigh every possibility: the food, the dog, the risk. Then he stretched out a trembling hand. Buddy, sensing his fear, did something remarkable. He lifted a paw and gently pushed the half sandwich closer, as if to say, "Go ahead. It's for you." Megan held her breath, her heart doing that old nervous flutter it hadn't done in years. Slowly, the boy picked up the sandwich. He didn't bolt, didn't gulp it down, but tore off a tiny bite, testing. His eyes widened. He took another, then another, until crumbs dotted his lips and some of the fear melted away. "You like dogs?" Megan asked, keeping her tone light, her hands in view. She remembered, with sudden vividness, her own childhood. A foster home, always strangers, never knowing who was safe. The boy nodded, not quite meeting her eyes. Buddy edged even closer, laying his head gently on the boy's knee. That seemed to do the trick. The boy gave a little laugh, just a puff of air, but it was something, and ran his fingers through Buddy's fur. "What's your name?" Megan asked. He hesitated, chewing. "Eli," he whispered. "Just Eli." Megan smiled. "I'm Megan, and this big guy is Buddy. He likes to share lunch. Looks like you do too." For a while, they sat in silence, sharing the makeshift meal. Megan noticed the way Eli's eyes darted to every sudden sound. The rumble of a distant truck, the shout of kids playing across the field. He tensed whenever someone came close, but Buddy's calm presence seemed to work some kind of magic. Soon, Eli relaxed, leaning against the dog's side as if he belonged there. Megan watched the two of them and felt a strange ache, a memory of loneliness, old and deep. She recognized the look in Eli's eyes, the wary hunger that went beyond food. She wanted to ask 1,000 questions. "Where are your parents? Are you hurt?" But she bit her tongue. Instead, she offered a quiet kindness. Half her apple, a bottle of water, a gentle smile that said, "I see you." A breeze stirred the maple leaves, sending little whirlwinds of pollen across the grass. For a moment, it felt like the world had narrowed down to this small circle of trust. A cop, a stray boy, and a dog whose only mission was to heal. Neither of them spoke about what had driven Eli here. Not yet. But as they sat together, Megan knew without any doubt that their lives were about to change. And somewhere deep in her chest, hope flared, bright and unexpected. Eli's fingers trembled as he nibbled at the sandwich, his wary eyes never straying far from Megan or the loyal German shepherd who sat pressed close at his side. Maple Hollow's old tree seemed to watch over them, its branches bowing slightly in the crisp spring air, as if to provide shelter not just from the sun, but from the hard edges of the world beyond the park. For a long moment, the only sounds were Buddy's steady breathing, the distant laughter of children, and the occasional rustle of wind through leaves. Megan watched Eli carefully, not wanting to scare him off, but sensing, almost intuitively, that the boy was on the edge. Every muscle in his thin body was coiled tight, as if he might bolt at any second. She saw the way his bare toes curled into the dirt, the defensive hunch of his shoulders. She remembered how it felt to be hungry and invisible, how suspicion sometimes grew faster than hope. As Eli finished the last bite of sandwich, Buddy took matters into his own paws. He nudged closer, his big brown eyes full of curiosity and something that looked like understanding. With a soft whine, Buddy stretched out his front paw, balancing a small scrap of sandwich on it, and extended it toward Eli. It was such a gentle, deliberate gesture that even Megan was surprised. For a moment, Eli just stared at the offering. Then, as if some ancient trust between child and animal kicked in, he accepted the piece, his lips quirking up in a fleeting, cautious smile. Megan grinned. "He's good at sharing, isn't he?" Eli nodded, still chewing, and this time Megan saw the barest flicker of something new in his face. Hope, maybe, or at least relief. The tension that had coiled between them, thick as invisible wire, began to loosen just a little. She decided to test the waters. "You know," she said, "I come here most Wednesdays for lunch. Sometimes the world gets a little quieter under this tree. She paused, letting her words settle. You're always welcome to join us. No questions asked. Eli's head shot up, suspicion returning for a second. Why? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. Megan hesitated, choosing her words with care. Well, I grew up around here. I know how tough it can be, feeling like you don't belong anywhere. Sometimes you just need a place to catch your breath. She offered him a warm, gentle smile. No tricks, just lunch. And Buddy, of course. Buddy let out a quiet woof, tail sweeping a patch of dirt clean. Eli looked at Megan, then at Buddy, uncertainty flickering in his gaze. Is he always this nice? He asked, one hand moving tentatively toward Buddy's head. Always, Megan replied. He's trained for all sorts of things. Search and rescue, helping out at the station. But mostly, he's just a big softy. For the first time, Eli allowed himself to pet Buddy, running his fingers through the dog's thick fur. The tension in his body seemed to melt a little more with every stroke. He reminds me of my old dog, Eli murmured, barely audible. Before, he trailed off, eyes suddenly distant. Megan sensed the wall going up again and backed off. She reached for her thermos and poured some water into the cap, offering it to Eli. Here, you look thirsty. Eli accepted the water, gulping it down like he hadn't had a proper drink in days. Megan kept her expression neutral, careful not to show too much concern. She recognized the signs. She'd seen them in herself once upon a time. There was a sadness in Eli, something heavy and old for a kid so young. Do you have somewhere to stay tonight? Megan asked gently, trying not to pry. Eli shrugged, eyes on the ground. I get by. The answer, vague and evasive, was enough. Megan felt a stab of helplessness. There were rules, protocols, things she couldn't ignore as an officer of the law. But there was also her gut, and her gut told her this boy needed more than bureaucracy. He needed trust, something she could offer in small doses. Just then, a sharp crack echoed from the far side of the park. A branch breaking, maybe, or a baseball slamming against the old wooden fence. Eli jerked as if struck, shrinking back, eyes wild for a split second. Buddy immediately nudged closer, pressing his weight against Eli's leg. The dog's presence worked magic. Eli's panic faded, replaced by a shaky exhale. Megan saw her chance. Listen, Eli, no pressure. But if you want, I can walk you to wherever you're staying. Or you can stay with Buddy and me a little longer. My shift's not over for a while. Eli hesitated, torn between flight and the possibility of safety. He glanced at Megan, weighing her words, then at Buddy, who now rolled onto his side, inviting a belly rub. The dog's goofy grin was the most honest thing Eli had seen in weeks. Finally, Eli nodded, almost imperceptibly. Can I just stay a little longer? He whispered. Of course, Megan said softly. Stay as long as you like. They sat in companionable silence. A mother with a stroller wandered by and gave Megan a curious glance, but she just nodded back, her posture protective. Eli leaned into Buddy, his eyes half closed, letting the warmth of the dog seep into his bones. Megan knew this was only the first step. She sensed a storm brewing, a battle with red tape, with Eli's fears, with the town's gossipy curiosity. But for now, beneath the ancient maple, she had managed to plant a seed. The faint, stubborn possibility that kindness could be trusted, at least for a little while. And for both of them, Megan and Eli, hope was the most precious thing of all. The world beyond Maple Hollow's old tree faded as Megan, Eli, and Buddy found themselves enclosed in a cocoon of sunlight and quiet, the rest of the park bustling just out of reach. For the first time in days, Eli allowed himself to simply be, a boy eating lunch with a kind stranger and her gentle dog, safe from the questions and stares that usually trailed him. Megan took a slow bite of her own sandwich, glancing over at Eli as he devoured every crumb of his. She could see hunger had been a too frequent visitor in his life, but more than that, it was the skittish, uncertain way he glanced at her, the way his body hovered on the edge of readiness to run, that caught her attention. She made a conscious effort not to press him. Instead, she spoke about things that had nothing to do with worry or the police. She pointed out the old squirrel's nest up high in the maple tree, joked about the time Buddy had chased his own tail in circles during a 4th of July parade. Buddy, for his part, seemed to know exactly what Eli needed. After polishing off his own half of the sandwich, he shifted his big head into Eli's lap and let out a low, happy sigh. Eli's hands found their way to Buddy's ears. He scratched gently, his movements hesitant at first, then more confident as Buddy melted beneath his touch. For a while, the boy almost forgot his worries. He even smiled, a real, lopsided grin that transformed his face. Megan caught the moment and stored it away like a treasure. Buddy's always loved picnics, Megan said with a wink. I think he likes the company even more than the food. Eli ran his hand through the dog's fur, eyes still wary but growing warmer. He's different from most dogs. He acts like he knows what I'm thinking. Megan nodded, recalling the days she'd leaned on Buddy after rough shifts, his quiet loyalty steadying her nerves. He does, in his own way. He's been my partner for a long time. Helped me find lost kids, scared people, folks who needed a hand. Eli looked up, his curiosity piqued. You're really a police officer? Megan nodded, pulling her badge out and letting it glint in the sunlight before tucking it away again. But not the kind who just writes tickets all day. Sometimes my job is just to help, even if it's just sharing lunch. She paused, giving him space to absorb that. And you know, I wasn't always on this side of things. Eli frowned. What do you mean? She leaned back, eyes tracing the shape of the branches above. When I was about your age, I got shuffled around a lot. Different houses, new people. I know what it's like to be unsure of where you fit. She didn't want to say too much, didn't want to make it about herself, but she saw the way Eli's eyes softened at the admission. My grandma used to say the world feels a little less scary when someone sits with you and listens, she added quietly. Eli studied her, measuring her words. Did you ever run away? Megan nodded, a sad smile tugging at her lips. A few times. Thought if I ran fast enough, maybe I could leave the bad days behind. She looked at him, her gaze gentle but unwavering. Didn't work, though. Turns out you still have to find someone you can trust to help you move forward. Eli's fingers slowed in Buddy's fur. He didn't speak, but Megan could see the gears turning. They sat together in the dappled shade. Megan sharing stories, funny ones mostly, about her early days on the force, and about Buddy's escapades, like the time he snuck into the mayor's office and ate an entire birthday cake. Eli chuckled, the sound small but sincere. The sun crept higher, casting shifting patterns of light across the grass. The trio drew a few curious glances from people walking by, neighbors who knew Megan as the local cop, parents with kids who waved, some even pausing to say hello to Buddy. But Megan made sure Eli never felt exposed. She deflected questions with a practiced ease, keeping their little picnic an island of privacy. Eli began to relax, little by little. The rigid set of his shoulders softened, and he leaned against Buddy, letting himself be anchored by the dog's solid warmth. Buddy's tail thumped lazily every so often, as if to say, "Everything's okay." Megan decided to gently test the waters again. "Do you want to talk about what's been going on? You don't have to, but sometimes it helps." Eli hesitated, the shadows flickering back into his eyes. "Not yet," he whispered. "That's okay," Megan replied, her voice steady. "When you're ready. For now, we can just enjoy the sunshine." They did just that, falling into a comfortable silence. Buddy drifted off to sleep, paws twitching in some doggy dream. Eli watched the clouds, tracing shapes in the sky with his finger. Megan let herself breathe out the tension she'd carried all morning. After a while, Eli broke the silence. "My mom used to take me on picnics, before she got sick." His voice was so soft Megan almost missed it. She didn't push, didn't ask for details. Instead, she nodded, her own heart aching with a memory she didn't share. "I bet she made the best sandwiches." Eli nodded, a tear slipping down his cheek. He brushed it away quickly, but Megan pretended not to notice, giving him space to gather himself. She knew sometimes the bravest thing was to simply sit with someone in their pain. As the afternoon stretched on, Megan realized how easily the world could shrink to 3 souls beneath a single tree: a boy, a dog, and a woman who remembered what it meant to be lost. She hoped, with every story and every moment of shared quiet, that Eli might start to believe he'd been found. As the dappled sunlight began to shift, signaling late afternoon, the world outside the safe circle beneath the maple tree seemed to grow a little louder. A lawnmower buzzed in the distance, and a few kids kicked a soccer ball on the far field, but within their haven, the silence felt sacred, a gentle hush that wrapped Megan, Eli, and Buddy together. The remnants of lunch sat between them, and Megan could see that Eli was no longer watching her with every bite, nor did he keep his body tensed for flight. Buddy remained sprawled in the grass, chin on Eli's leg, the picture of contentment. For the first time, Eli looked like he belonged somewhere, but as their little picnic wound down, Megan sensed the moment coming, a quiet unburdening, if only she was patient enough not to rush it. She began packing away the lunch containers, not in any hurry, giving Eli space to find his words. The wind picked up, fluttering napkins across the grass, and Buddy, ever the helper, nosed one back toward Eli, who grinned and wiped his hands. The boy glanced up, a seriousness shadowing his face. Megan met his gaze, open and steady, silently letting him know that whatever he shared would be received without judgment. "My mom got sick," Eli said quietly, eyes dropping to his sneakers. "It happened kind of fast. First it was the coughing. Then she couldn't get out of bed. After a while, she stopped waking up." He twisted the napkin in his hands, struggling with the memory. "We were in this little apartment by the railroad tracks. One day, the ambulance came, and they took her away. I waited for her to come back. She didn't." The world seemed to pause. Megan's heart twisted. She kept her face calm, blinking back the sting in her eyes. She knew that look, the shock of losing someone, the ache of waiting for an answer that never came. "How long have you been on your own?" Megan asked gently, her voice low. Eli shrugged, trying to sound braver than he felt. "A few weeks, I guess. Maybe more." He fumbled for words. "There was this lady next door who'd bring me leftovers, but then she moved out last week. After that, I just started walking." Some nights I sleep in the laundromat or in the library when it's open. I just keep moving so nobody notices. A wave of grief swept over Megan, but she refused to let it show. Instead, she offered her presence, leaning in, eyes kind, voice strong. "You're not invisible here, Eli," she said. "Not anymore." For a moment, Eli looked stunned, as if he couldn't quite process what she meant. He blinked rapidly, biting his lower lip. Buddy pressed in closer, as if to reassure him. The dog nudged the napkin into Eli's lap, his big brown eyes so full of empathy that Eli managed a shaky smile. "I keep thinking if I don't talk about it, maybe it won't hurt as much," Eli admitted, voice trembling. "But every night I dream she's still there. When I wake up, it's just empty." Megan nodded, sharing the silence with him. "Sometimes, holding it all inside feels like the only way to survive. But you're not alone. Not now. And it's okay to let someone else carry a piece of it with you." The trust that had started with a shared sandwich now glimmered brighter. Megan could see it in the way Eli looked at her. Not with fear, but with cautious hope. She wanted to wrap him in safety, but she knew better than to smother him. Instead, she asked the simplest question, the one that always brought her comfort as a child. "What did you love most about your mom?" Eli considered, his face softening. "She used to read me stories. She had this way of making everything sound like an adventure, even if we couldn't leave the apartment. She'd make up stories about trains and dragons and—" He swallowed. "And sometimes we'd have pancakes for dinner, just because." Megan smiled, picturing a small, bright apartment filled with the scent of syrup and the sound of laughter. "She sounds wonderful," she said. Eli nodded, wiping his eyes on his sleeve. "I wish I could tell her I'm okay. I wish I could tell her about Buddy." Buddy, as if understanding every word, gently licked Eli's hand, then nudged the napkin again, making Eli laugh. A clear, clean sound that broke the tension. The wind shifted, carrying with it the faintest bell of the ice cream truck on the other side of the park. Megan saw Eli's eyes flicker, half longing, half embarrassed. Before he could say anything, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a crumpled dollar bill and a handful of coins. "What do you say? Ice cream for dessert?" She grinned. Eli looked at her astonished, and for a moment the weight of the past few weeks fell away. "Can Buddy have some too?" "Buddy will insist," Megan replied, already standing up. They crossed the grass together, Buddy bouncing alongside, and Megan made sure Eli chose whatever he wanted. A double scoop with rainbow sprinkles. She let him pay, watching as he handled the money with care, and let him lead the way back to their bench. As they sat, licking melting ice cream and sharing the first truly sweet moment in what felt like forever, Megan made a silent promise. She would not let Eli fall through the cracks. She would fight for him, just as others had once fought for her. And as the shadows lengthened and the world around them returned to its steady rush, Megan realized this was no longer just a random meeting in the park. This was the beginning of something bigger. A rescue, a bond, a new chapter written in the language of hope. Buddy snuggled close, Eli's laughter ringing through the branches. For the first time, he looked less like a lost child and more like a kid ready to be found. The afternoon wore on, and the sunlight began to mellow, turning Maple Hollow's park golden. Megan and Eli were halfway through their ice cream cones, with Buddy lapping the last of a vanilla scoop from a paper cup, when a gentle commotion stirred near the playground. A pair of teenagers waved cell phones, giggling and whispering as they snapped a photo of the trio under the grand old tree. Megan didn't mind. Buddy was a local celebrity, after all, famous for his role in school demonstrations and the annual 4th of July parade. But what Megan didn't realize was that another figure, Amanda Park, the reporter from the Maple Hollow Gazette, had been walking her dog nearby and witnessed the scene. Amanda was known for her knack for capturing small-town moments that spoke to larger truths. She watched as Buddy pressed closer to Eli, as Megan offered her own water bottle to the boy, and she saw something remarkable. A moment of kindness that glowed against the backdrop of an often hard world. Amanda raised her camera, and with the instinct of a storyteller, snapped a candid photo that would soon ripple far beyond Maple Hollow. By early evening, Amanda had posted the picture on her social media feed, captioning it, "Sometimes, a simple lunch under a maple tree means more than we know. Officer Carter, her K-9 buddy, and a local boy remind us what community looks like." Within an hour, likes and shares started piling up. Old classmates of Megan's commented about how she'd always been a helper. Parents tagged each other with heart emojis, and more than a few townspeople wondered who the barefoot boy was. Someone in town recognized Eli, recalling the boy who used to live in the apartment by the tracks with his mother. A chain of questions followed. Was he okay? Did he need help? Shouldn't someone do something? Back at the park, Megan was oblivious to the digital storm brewing. She was too busy watching Eli. For the first time, he didn't seem burdened by the weight of loneliness. Instead, he was wrapped in Buddy's antics. How the dog performed a clumsy rollover for a bit of cone. How he snatched a stick from the grass and proudly delivered it to Eli's feet. Megan couldn't help but feel a rare, swelling happiness. A sense that something good had finally found its way to this small corner of the world. But the world doesn't stay quiet for long, especially in a town like Maple Hollow. As dusk approached, Megan's phone vibrated with texts and calls. At first, she ignored it, not wanting to break the spell of the afternoon, but the buzz grew insistent, and finally, she answered a call from her friend Sarah, a dispatcher at the police station. "Megan, are you at the park?" Sarah asked, her tone a mixture of excitement and concern. "Yeah, why?" "You're all over the internet. Someone posted a photo, it's gone viral. People want to know about the boy with you. Some are even calling the station." Megan's heart skipped. She glanced at Eli, who was tossing a stick for Buddy, unaware of the attention. "Just tell them he's safe," Megan said quietly, "and that he's with me for now." Sarah hesitated. "The chief's going to want answers. You know how things get when the press is involved." Megan felt a rush of anxiety but quickly tamped it down. "Understood. I'll handle it." She hung up and tucked the phone away, determined not to let Eli see her concern, but the mood had shifted. She watched Eli, now aware that their little world under the maple was suddenly exposed to eyes everywhere. A moment later, Amanda Park herself approached, her notepad in hand, camera slung around her neck. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, her voice gentle. "But people are talking about you three. That photo is everywhere." Eli froze, glancing from Megan to Amanda, panic flickering in his eyes. Megan stood protectively, a silent message to the reporter that she would not tolerate any intrusion. Amanda read the tension and softened her approach. "I just wanted to let you know, there's been an outpouring of support already. Local families are asking how they can help. People are leaving comments, some offering meals, others blankets, even offers to foster Buddy if you ever need it." Eli stared, stunned. Megan could see he was overwhelmed, uncertain if all this attention was a blessing or a curse. She put a gentle hand on his shoulder. You don't have to talk to anyone, Eli. You're safe here. I'll handle the grown-ups. Buddy, sensing Eli's distress, pressed against his side, resting his head on the boy's knee. The moment was intimate and sweet, a silent show of solidarity. Amanda lowered her voice. I promise not to mention his name or any personal details. People just want to help. It's not every day we see such genuine kindness. Megan nodded, offering a guarded smile. Thanks, Amanda. But please be careful. He's been through enough. Amanda agreed, snapped one last picture, this time of Buddy's paw in Eli's hand, and quietly left. As the sun slipped below the horizon, Megan and Eli packed up to leave. But the world had grown bigger in a matter of hours. People waved as they crossed the parking lot. A woman from the bakery called out, "Let us know if he needs dinner." A teenager offered Eli a half-eaten bag of chips. Even Buddy got extra head pats and treats from strangers. Megan drove Eli and Buddy to her house that night, determined to shield him from the worst of the sudden spotlight. Inside, she turned off her phone and let Eli help feed Buddy his dinner. The house felt safe, walls holding out the noise of a world now buzzing with their story. As Eli drifted off to sleep on the couch, Buddy at his feet, Megan sat at the kitchen table and scrolled through the flood of messages. Support poured in from neighbors and strangers alike. But mixed among the warmth were questions, concerns, and hints of skepticism. She realized, with a surge of resolve, that the days ahead would not be easy. But as she watched Buddy nuzzle closer to Eli, she knew one thing for sure: they wouldn't face it alone. Megan had always believed in the power of kindness, but as she woke the next morning to a blinking phone and dozens of missed calls, she was reminded of the other side of compassion, the part where rules, doubts, and small-town suspicions could turn even the best intentions into controversy. Eli was still asleep on the living room couch, curled up in a cocoon of blankets. Buddy kept a silent vigil at his feet, eyes half closed, but ever alert. The soft thump of Buddy's tail was the only sound in the quiet house, as Megan tiptoed into the kitchen to make coffee and steel herself for the day ahead. Her phone buzzed again. The Maple Hollow police chief, the social services office, and even the mayor's assistant had all left messages. Each one was some variation of concern, protocol, or outright warning. We need to follow the process. Don't get personally involved. We have rules for a reason. Megan sighed. She had known this was coming. The instant Eli's story and his face hit social media, it was only a matter of time before someone would question her right to care for him, her role as both protector and potential guardian. She brewed a second mug of coffee and watched Buddy as the dog gently nosed Eli awake. The boy blinked groggily, surprised to find himself warm, safe, and inside a house that smelled like cinnamon and fresh laundry. "Good morning," Megan said softly. "There's breakfast if you're hungry. I thought we might take Buddy for a walk before things get busy." Eli nodded, rubbing his eyes. "Do we have to go back to the park?" Megan shook her head. "Nope. Today's about quiet places, just us." They ate toast and fruit in the sunny kitchen, Buddy thumping his tail in anticipation of their morning walk. For a little while, the world outside was forgotten, but reality came knocking soon enough. Before Megan could finish her second cup of coffee, there was a knock at the door. Two social workers stood on her porch, one familiar, the other a stranger with a briefcase and a look that said he'd seen too many stories like Eli's. "We need to talk, Officer Carter," said Ms. Green, the social worker Megan knew. "It's about Eli." Eli tensed, instinctively moving closer to Buddy. Megan rested a reassuring hand on his shoulder and invited the social workers in. The conversation that followed was a careful dance, part empathy, part bureaucracy. Ms. Green wanted to know everything. How had Eli come to be with Megan? Where had he been staying? Was there family to contact? The man with the briefcase, Mr. Leonard, read out procedures and cited legal codes. They reminded Megan of the risks of keeping Eli in her home without official placement, the liability for both her and the department. Megan listened, her jaw tight. "He's safe here," she insisted. "He's been through enough. Let's not traumatize him more with another strange place." Mr. Leonard's voice was firm. "We understand your concern, Officer Carter, but this is not protocol. We need to find a temporary foster arrangement while we investigate. Until a guardian can be appointed, Eli can't stay here." Eli's face crumpled. Buddy whined and pressed even closer, laying his head in Eli's lap. Megan's protective instincts surged. "Let me take responsibility for him. I'll file whatever paperwork you need. At least let him stay until you sort this out." Ms. Green hesitated. "The system is overloaded. Foster placements are scarce right now, and Eli already trusts you and Buddy." She looked at Mr. Leonard, then back at Megan. "If you're willing to cooperate with regular check-ins and background checks, maybe we can work something out temporarily. But it won't be easy." Megan nodded, clinging to that sliver of hope. "Anything. I'll do whatever it takes." After the social workers left, Megan turned to Eli. "They just want to make sure you're safe, okay? I'm not going anywhere, and neither is Buddy." But Megan knew it wasn't that simple. She could already hear the undercurrent of rumor in town, the whispers about the cop who took in the runaway, the people who questioned whether Eli belonged with her, whether she was overstepping. In Maple Hollow, word spread faster than wildfire, and not everyone saw the world with the same compassion as Amanda Park or the bakery owner who'd offered them bread. That afternoon, Megan's supervisor called. "You know you're making things hard for yourself, right?" he said, trying to sound understanding. "There's a process, Meg. The press, the department, they're all watching. You have to be careful." "I know," she replied. "But if you saw the way Buddy is with him, if you saw what I see, you'd understand." He sighed. "Just don't make any mistakes, and don't let your heart get ahead of your badge." The conversation left Megan rattled. She worried about making the wrong move, about saying the wrong thing, and losing her chance to protect Eli. The stress began to show. She snapped at the coffee machine, let dishes pile up, and lost herself in anxious thoughts. But Buddy remained steadfast. The German Shepherd seemed to sense Megan's anxiety, sticking close by her side, eyes always on Eli, body tense whenever the phone rang or someone knocked at the door. One evening, as Megan sat at the kitchen table surrounded by paperwork and forms, Buddy climbed into her lap, awkward for a dog his size, and laid his head against her chest. Eli giggled, the sound breaking through Megan's tension. "You look funny with a big dog in your lap," Eli said, grinning for the first time that day. Megan laughed too, the sound rough but real. She reached out and pulled Eli and Buddy into a big, awkward group hug. "Maybe we're all a little funny," she said, "but we stick together." For all the rules and judgment pressing in from the outside, Megan realized the most important thing was right here. The fragile trust she'd built with Eli, the comfort Buddy brought to both of them, and the simple, stubborn hope that even in the face of doubt, doing what felt right mattered. The battle for Eli's safety had only just begun, but Megan vowed she wouldn't back down. As long as she had Buddy by her side, she would fight for the boy who'd found a home beneath the old maple tree. The days that followed were a storm of paperwork, anxious waiting, and late-night worry. Every morning, Megan woke to new emails from social services, requests for documentation, and questions about her fitness to care for Eli. It felt at times like the world was stacked against them, every ounce of hope balanced on the tip of a bureaucratic scale. But Megan wasn't alone. News of the lunch under the maple tree had reached further than she'd imagined, and the small acts of kindness that had blossomed online began to find their way to her doorstep. It started with the Hearts and Hearths nonprofit, a small but passionate group known around Maple Hollow for stepping in where the system failed. Their director, Mrs. Evelyn Chang, knocked on Megan's door one morning carrying a clipboard, a thermos of strong coffee, and a smile that radiated competence. "Officer Carter," Evelyn said, shaking Megan's hand with surprising strength. "I saw the story online. You've done something wonderful. I'm here to help you make sure it lasts." Megan was so relieved she nearly cried. "We're drowning in red tape," she admitted, motioning to the pile of forms on her dining table. "I don't know if they'll let Eli stay." Evelyn set to work immediately. She sat down with Megan, explaining the process step by step, what forms to file, which agencies to contact, how to frame her petition for temporary guardianship in the strongest possible light. "You're not just a police officer. You're a trusted member of this community," Evelyn said. "And Buddy's become a symbol of hope for a lot of people. Let's use that." By the afternoon, Evelyn had called in volunteers, a retired lawyer to handle legal questions, a counselor to help Eli with his trauma, and even a local mom who dropped off a bag of groceries and a new backpack. Megan watched, awed and humbled, as neighbors she barely knew came together to lift the burden she'd been carrying alone. But kindness brought scrutiny as well. Not everyone in Maple Hollow saw Megan's fight as noble. At the grocery store, an older woman whispered loudly about cops taking in strays. At the station, Megan overheard two officers question whether she was getting too involved. A local blogger even wrote a post speculating about Megan's motives, twisting her story into a headline for clicks. The tension all came to a head at the town hall meeting. The mayor, sensing public pressure, called the meeting to discuss Officer Carter's actions and the future of young Eli. The auditorium buzzed with voices, supporters clutching homemade signs, critics demanding to know why protocol had been bent. Megan sat in the front row, Eli beside her, his hand clutching Buddy's collar so tightly his knuckles turned white. Buddy, sensing the storm in the room, pressed against Eli's leg, an anchor in the chaos. When the mayor opened the floor for comments, Evelyn was the first to speak. "This isn't about breaking rules," she said, her voice strong. "It's about fixing a system that's supposed to protect children, not punish them for being unlucky." Officer Carter and Buddy gave Eli more than food. They gave him hope. One by one, neighbors rose to speak. The librarian described the nights she'd let Eli sleep between the shelves, too scared to call the authorities. The baker shared how Megan had once paid for groceries when she was struggling. Even Amanda Park, the reporter, spoke. "The world is watching Maple Hollow. What we do here matters." Finally, the mayor turned to Megan. "Would you like to address the council?" Megan stood, nerves tight. But when she looked down at Eli and Buddy, she found her strength. "I didn't become a police officer just to enforce laws," she began. "I took an oath to protect and serve. Sometimes, serving means seeing the hurt that rules can't heal. Eli isn't just a case number. He's a kid who's lost more than any of us can imagine. I only did what anyone would do, what I hope someone would do for me, or for my child." She paused, voice thick with emotion. "And I couldn't have done it without this community. When one of us stumbles, the rest lift them up. That's what Maple Hollow means to me." The room fell silent for a moment. Then a ripple of applause began, swelling as more neighbors joined in. The mayor nodded, and with a glance at the city attorney, quietly announced that, pending a final background check, Megan would be granted temporary guardianship of Eli while the legal process played out. The meeting ended with tears and hugs. Evelyn squeezed Megan's hand. "We're not done fighting, but tonight you can rest." Back at home, Eli was quiet, processing everything. Buddy, sensing the boy's exhaustion, curled up beside him on the couch. Megan made grilled cheese sandwiches for dinner, and for the first time in days, laughter filled the house. Eli even told Megan about his mom's pancake for dinner tradition, and she promised they'd try it soon. Before bed, Megan tucked a blanket around Eli, who was already half asleep. She leaned in and whispered, "You're safe, kiddo. We're family now, for as long as you need." As Buddy settled down, letting out a contented sigh, Megan felt the weight on her shoulders lighten. The fight was far from over, but for the first time, it felt winnable. Because now they weren't facing it alone. The power of small kindnesses, the kind that started with a sandwich and grew into a movement, had brought them here. And with every voice that joined theirs, the harder it became for anyone to break the fragile, beautiful bond they'd built under the old maple tree. The days after the town hall meeting felt like a gentle awakening. For the first time in weeks, Eli slept through the night. The fear of being uprooted again faded, replaced by the comfort of routine and the warmth of a home where laughter and the occasional bark filled the air. Megan, Eli, and Buddy slowly wove themselves into the fabric of each other's lives, learning lessons about family, trust, and the courage it takes to start over. Megan woke up every morning to the sun streaming in through the kitchen window, the smell of brewing coffee, and Buddy's tail thumping against the door in anticipation of his morning walk. Eli, always a light sleeper, was usually the first to greet Buddy, rubbing his ears and whispering secret plans for the day. Megan loved the way their mornings started, unhurried, peaceful, as if each sunrise gave them permission to try again. Breakfast became their ritual. Some days, Eli made pancakes, just the way his mom used to, flipping them with a look of concentration that made Megan smile. On others, Megan would show him how to scramble eggs, or let him measure out oats for homemade granola. Whatever they cooked, Buddy supervised from his spot under the table, ready to pounce on any morsel that tumbled to the floor. The three of them would sit together, the quiet broken by the clink of forks and the gentle conversation that slowly grew deeper with each passing day. Megan knew that trust was not given easily, especially for a child who'd been let down too often. She never pushed Eli to talk about his past, but she was there when he was ready. One rainy afternoon, as they worked on a jigsaw puzzle at the kitchen table, Eli suddenly spoke, voice small but steady. "I used to think being alone was safer. If you didn't let anyone in, they couldn't hurt you or leave." Megan nodded, understanding more than he knew. "I used to feel that way too," she admitted. "But it gets lonely. And sometimes, letting the right people in is what saves you." Eli looked up, searching her face for any sign of insincerity. But Megan's eyes were honest, and in that moment, something shifted. Eli reached across the table and placed his hand over Megan's. "I'm glad I met you," he whispered. Buddy, not to be left out, let out a huff and nudged Eli's arm until he laughed. That laughter, Megan realized, was the sound of walls coming down. As the weeks passed, Megan watched Eli grow, not just taller, but stronger in spirit. He started to bring home library books, reading them aloud to Buddy, who listened with the seriousness of a professor. Sometimes, Megan would catch him explaining things to the dog, as if Buddy were his little brother. "You have to be gentle with pancakes, Buddy. And you have to let people help you when you're scared." Megan learned from Eli, too. She learned patience, the kind that doesn't rush healing or demand answers before someone's ready. She learned that family isn't always about blood, but about who stays beside you when you're at your lowest. She learned to forgive herself for the things she couldn't fix in the past, and to let joy into her heart. One small act at a time. At dinner, their conversations became a tapestry of stories and dreams. Eli told Megan about his mom's love of music, how she'd dance with him in their little apartment. Megan shared stories of growing up in foster care, the pain of moving from house to house, and the teacher who'd given her hope. Buddy became the thread that tied it all together, a patient listener, a source of comfort, and the living proof that love can heal even the oldest wounds. One evening, as rain tapped on the windows and the fireplace crackled, Eli pulled out a box of old crayons and paper. "Let's make this place ours," he said. And together they decorated the walls with drawings of trains, dogs, and giant maple trees. Megan watched as Eli's creativity flowed, each picture a testament to a boy beginning to believe he belonged. On weekends, they took long walks through the woods. Buddy bounded ahead, chasing squirrels and sniffing out hidden trails. Megan and Eli talked about everything and nothing, what they wanted for dinner, whether dragons might be real, and how a single act of kindness can ripple out into the world. Eli opened up more with each step, his voice brighter, his shoulders straighter. Sometimes, Megan caught herself wondering how long their little family could last. There were still challenges ahead. Court hearings, paperwork, the slow grind of the system. But each day brought a little more hope, a little more certainty that what they were building was real. Eli started to invite friends from school over for lunch. The first time, he was shy, hovering near Megan as she made sandwiches. But his friends quickly warmed to Buddy, and soon the house echoed with laughter and the stomp of muddy shoes. Megan's heart soared as she watched Eli share his world, no longer hiding from it. On quiet nights, after Eli was asleep and Buddy curled up at the foot of his bed, Megan sat by the fireplace and reflected on all they'd learned. She realized her job wasn't just about enforcing the law, but about nurturing second chances. For Eli, for herself, and for anyone brave enough to reach out for help. Sometimes, Buddy would lift his head and pat over, laying his chin on Megan's knee. She'd scratch his ears and whisper, "You did good, boy." In those moments, with the house aglow with warmth and the sound of Eli's soft breathing drifting down the hall, Megan knew they had found something rare. Not just a place to live, but a place to heal, to laugh, and to call home. By the end of that first month, it became clear that what began as a small act of kindness under the maple tree had reached far beyond Megan, Eli, and Buddy. Maple Hollow, always a place where everyone knew everyone's business, now felt somehow softer, kinder. It started with neighbors dropping off home-cooked meals and hand-me-down coats for Eli. But soon the wave of compassion rolled outward, touching people Megan had never met. One rainy Thursday, the principal at the elementary school called Megan. "I just thought you'd want to know. We've had more families reach out for help this week than in all of last fall, she said. They said they saw your story with Eli and realized it was okay to ask. Local businesses joined in too. The owner of the diner started a Pay It Forward board, where anyone could buy a meal for someone in need. The library set up a reading hour for kids who didn't want to go home after school, promising snacks and stories in a corner made cozy with donated beanbags and blankets. At the animal shelter, volunteers doubled, all inspired by Buddy's gentle presence. Buddy, for his part, had become Maple Hollow's unofficial mascot. Kids who once darted away from police cars now waved, eager for a chance to pet Buddy or toss him a treat. Parents who used to keep their distance from the police started stopping Megan in the grocery store, not with complaints or nervous glances, but with thanks. "You made us believe in good cops again," one father said, giving her a quick, embarrassed hug. But the biggest change was harder to see. It was in the little things, the way neighbors checked on each other, the basket of groceries left on a stoop, the elderly woman across the street who no longer ate dinner alone. Megan saw it in the faces of people at church, in the lines at the food pantry, and in the extra cookies tucked into Eli's backpack by his new friend's parents. What had begun as a lifeline for one boy became a reason for an entire community to look out for each other. At home, Megan watched Eli blossom. He started writing letters, thank you notes to the families who'd helped, a long, earnest message to Buddy, "You saved me and you don't even know it." And, with a little encouragement from Megan, a letter to his mother. In it, Eli described his new life, his friends, and the dog who slept by his side every night. "I think you'd like Megan," he wrote. "She listens like you did, and she knows how to make pancakes on weekends. Sometimes I still miss you, but it hurts less when I'm with Buddy and Megan. I think you'd be proud of me for not running away this time." Megan, too, found herself changed by the experience. One evening, after tucking Eli into bed, she sat down at her desk and pulled out a sheet of stationery. She wrote to her late mentor, Captain Wallace, who had trained her when she was just starting out. "You always told me that real police work wasn't about the badge or the gun. It was about being present for people, listening when no one else would. I didn't always understand what you meant, but I do now. Thank you for teaching me that service is about heart, not just duty." She folded the letter and tucked it into her journal, a private token of gratitude and closure. It wasn't long before the local newspaper picked up on the growing spirit of generosity. Amanda Park, never far from a good story, wrote a follow-up piece titled "The Lunch That Changed Maple Hollow." In it, she chronicled the surge in volunteerism, the spike in donations to the food pantry and animal shelter, and the small but powerful ways the town had shifted. She ended the article with a quote from Megan. "Sometimes, sharing a sandwich is more than just food. It's a message. It says, you matter, you belong. If we could all remember that, just once a day, the world would be a different place." The story resonated beyond Maple Hollow. Letters and emails poured in from neighboring towns and even distant states. Some shared stories of their own struggles and small acts of kindness. Others simply wanted to thank Megan and Eli for reminding them that goodness still existed. The police chief, once worried about all the attention, admitted in a staff meeting, "If every officer had just one Buddy moment a year, we'd have a different world." But the real lessons were felt at home. Eli no longer shrank from attention, nor did he hide when someone rang the doorbell. He joined Megan and Buddy on neighborhood walks, waving to the people who'd once been strangers. He started helping at the library's reading hour, patiently reading stories to younger kids. Buddy curled at his feet, as if to say, This is what safety looks like. Megan, for her part, became a resource for other officers, a quiet advisor on how to balance rules with empathy. She never let herself forget that she'd been given a second chance too, through the trust of a frightened boy and the loyalty of a dog. On the first anniversary of their lunch under the maple tree, the whole community gathered in the park. There were balloons, sandwiches, music, and games. Buddy got his own cake, and Eli, beaming, surrounded by friends, gave a short speech. "Thank you for being my family," he said simply. "You made me believe in people again." As the crowd applauded and Buddy barked his approval, Megan felt tears prick her eyes, not of sorrow, but of joy. She looked around and saw not just neighbors, but a true community, one forged by compassion, made stronger by every ripple of kindness, and held together by the unbreakable bond of hope. Evenings at Megan's house had a way of wrapping the day in quiet gold. Light from the fireplace flickered on the walls. Buddy snored softly by the hearth, and Eli settled into his favorite spot on the couch, a book in his lap and a mug of cocoa in his hands. It had been nearly a year since that fateful lunch beneath the maple tree. But sometimes, Megan still caught herself marveling at how much could change with one simple act of kindness. The world outside felt different now, too. Maple Hollow had become a place where stories like Eli's weren't whispered in shame, but celebrated as proof of what community could be. At the grocery store, neighbors swapped recipes and news, and in the park, it was never unusual to see Buddy surrounded by a crowd of laughing children or seniors stopping by for a word with Megan. But for Megan, the real transformation was in the quiet moments, the everyday routines that now brimmed with meaning. On a gentle spring evening, Megan decided it was time to share their story in her own words. Eli, shy but eager, agreed to help, and Buddy, always the willing participant, stretched out at their feet, tail thumping in anticipation. Megan set her phone on the coffee table, propped up to record, and smiled at Eli. "You ready, bud?" she asked. Eli grinned. "As ready as I'll ever be." Megan took a breath, glancing into the camera as she began. "Hi, everyone. For those who don't know us, I'm Megan Carter. This is Eli, and down here is Buddy." Buddy wagged his tail on cue. A little less than a year ago, we met by chance under the big maple tree in our town's park. I was on my lunch break. Buddy was hoping for extra snacks, and Eli was a brave kid who'd been through more than most of us could imagine. She looked at Eli, who gave a shy nod. "I didn't have anywhere to go," he said quietly, "but Buddy and Megan made me feel safe." Megan smiled, squeezing his shoulder. "That day changed all of us. We became a family, not by blood, but by choice and by kindness. It wasn't always easy. There were a lot of hard days. But we learned that sometimes, the smallest act, like sharing a sandwich or sitting together on a bench, can change the course of a life." As she spoke, Megan's eyes glistened with gratitude. She thought about the nights she'd worried if she could do enough, the battles with bureaucracy, and the quiet triumphs of each new day. Eli's first sleepover, Buddy's visit to the school, the countless smiles and small kindnesses exchanged among neighbors. Eli chimed in, his voice growing steadier with each word. "I used to think I had to do everything by myself, but Megan and Buddy taught me it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to let people care about you." He reached down and stroked Buddy's head, a gesture so natural it spoke volumes about how far he'd come. Megan nodded. "If there's one thing we've learned, it's that family can be built anywhere, sometimes right when you least expect it. And sometimes it starts with just showing up for someone, without asking for anything in return. She looked straight into the camera, her voice gentle but full of conviction. If you're watching this, and you have a loyal friend beside you, whether they're two-legged or four, give them a hug tonight. Let them know they matter. And if you ever feel alone, remember that you don't have to be. Reaching out, even a little, might just change everything. Eli added, and if you see someone who needs a friend, don't be afraid to be that person. Buddy gave a low, happy bark, earning laughter from both Megan and Eli. Megan concluded, "We hope our story inspires you, just as Maple Hollow inspired us. If it touched your heart, please share your thoughts or your own story below." Sometimes, your words are the hope someone else needs. And if you'd like to hear more stories like ours, feel free to like, comment, or subscribe. Every story shared makes our world a little kinder. She ended the video and sat back, feeling the weight and warmth of everything they'd built together. For a moment, silence filled the room, the quiet of a house that was, at last, a home. Later, after posting the video, Megan lit a fire and settled in with Eli and Buddy. Outside, the sky faded to dusk, painting the world in indigo and rose. Buddy curled up by the fireplace, his head resting on Eli's knee, while Megan watched them with a soft smile. Eli leaned into Buddy, reading his letter aloud, one he'd written to himself, a kind of promise. No matter what happens, I know I'm not alone anymore. I have a home. That night, Megan took a few minutes to herself. She wrote in her journal, reflecting on the journey. She thought of her late mentor, of her younger self, and of every moment that had led them here. She thanked the universe for second chances and for the lessons learned from both hardship and hope. Before turning in, Megan stood by Eli's door, watching the boy sleep, Buddy nestled close. The peace in that room was hard-won, a testament to the power of presence, listening, and love that asks for nothing in return. Downstairs, the comments on their video poured in. Stories of people who'd reached out to neighbors, adopted shelter pets, or simply found the courage to ask for help. The ripple effect of their little family's story continued, stretching far beyond Maple Hollow, touching hearts in places Megan would never see. And so, as the fire crackled low and the night grew still, Megan whispered a simple blessing over her family. May we always remember where we started and how far love can take us. In that house, under a sky full of possibility, Megan, Eli, and Buddy knew the truth, that home isn't a place you find, but a place you create. One moment of kindness, one act of courage, and one open heart at a time.